The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 186.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today we have Jeff Steinmann, author of How to Quit Working, A Simple Plan to Leave Your Job for a Life of Freedom. Welcome, Jeff, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thanks for having me, Wade. It's a blast to be here.
Absolutely. Before we take a dive into your book, How to Quit Working, we take just a moment to introduce yourself. Tell us just a little bit about you personally.
Yeah, well, I kind of am like everybody else in that I went to high school and went to college, and I thought there was no other option but to get a job. So I did that, actually fell into a career in technology and did that for about 15 years and tried many, many times to escape the gravity of the corporate world and was unsuccessful many of those times. But finally was successful in April. It was actually April 15th of 2012. And I've been doing business and marketing consulting, real estate investing, and also building this great platform around how to help people quit their jobs and start a business.
Excellent. So thank you for sharing that. And now let's jump right into what you were just discussing, which is your book, How to Quit Working, A Simple Plan to Leave Your Job for a Life of Freedom, which was made available not that long ago, actually almost up on its 2-year anniversary, I guess, March 18th of 2013. And Jeff, we're going to move quickly, but we're here to cover the top questions that our listener/future reader would like to get answered. And that first question is, what was the inspiration behind writing How to Quit Working?
Yeah, well, the inspiration behind the book was really that, I left my job and I had made, as I mentioned, I made several attempts at quitting the job and starting a business, and most of them, well, all of them except for one, was unsuccessful. And I really got interested in, well, what's the difference between all of those unsuccessful attempts and finally being successful? So really, my book, I start off by telling some stories about the unsuccessful attempts, and then when I finally was able to do it successfully. And really, the entire book is about what's different. What is different in terms of mindset and approach and all those different kinds of things.
So, Jeff, when we first started off, you and I were talking about how many books come out for entrepreneurs alone every single month. And so this next question I really think helps separate your book from the rest. So what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Well, one of the things that I strove really hard to do is I know that, in this, not only in the U.S., but really as far as I know throughout the world, we don't teach entrepreneurship. We don't teach children anything about business. So most of the folks that are reading my book don't have a business background. So I tried really hard to eliminate all of the jargon and eliminate all of the business words and just talk in plain, simple English. And actually, if you look at the reviews on Amazon, people really appreciate the fact that it's not full of a lot of jargony business words. And then I also tried to just be really practical and target it right at somebody and tailor all of the information in the book to someone who is working a full-time job and trying to get out and start their own business. And there's some really specific challenges that you face when you're in that situation, like one being the finances, right? I mean, how do you pay the bills if you're quitting your job and starting a business and knowing that, there's going to be issues and challenges there and it may not work and all that stuff. So we've really targeted the book to those folks who are in that situation.
Jeff, how did you structure the book, or how do you suggest the reader engage with your book? Is this one that they can jump in and jump out, cherry picking information, or did you write it to the fact that they can, really read it from front to back?
Well, it's really designed to be read from front to back. And the reason that I did that is there's a lot of stories weaved in through the book. And really, in order for the tactical concepts and for the real nuts and bolts information to be useful in the book, you kind of got to start to change the way that you think. And I use a lot of stories and examples from guests who've been on my show. And there's, I think, nearly 20 successful entrepreneurs who are profiled throughout the book. And I really use their stories as well as some concepts that I've discovered and that other folks have used to be successful to really change the way that you think about business and think about leaving your job in order to make the practical nuts and bolts stuff, which is in kind of the middle third of the book, really make sense. So I really recommend front to back.
Excellent. So Jeff, now that we know a little bit of the purpose, the background behind the book, let's take a deep dive into the content itself. So will you take the next, really the next 5 to 8 minutes and give this future reader a great idea of what they can expect to get out of reading your book?
Yeah. So, the most important thing for folks that are out there who are working a full-time job and trying to quit and start a business is that you have to change the way that you look at starting a business. You have to get away from what I call the idea mentality. And the idea mentality is perpetuated by shows like Shark Tank. Right, so the premise of Shark Tank is you get this brilliant idea and you start working on it, and then you go in front of these sharks and they tell you if they think that your brilliant idea is any good or not. And while that makes sense for those people in that situation, that's not how you successfully quit your job and start a business. In order to really be successful, you can't afford. Now, if you look at some of the people who have been on Shark Tank, they are amazing people who've taken huge risks and they've devoted a huge portion of their life, in fact, most of their life in many cases, to that whole to that business that they're starting into making that idea a reality. But what I find is that there's a lot of people out there who aren't that serious about their business. They just want to earn money in a way that's independent of a company that tells you what to do and how to do it and when to show up. So you got to get away from that idea of having a idea and move more towards the concept of starting with what is it that people already gravitate towards you for. Right? Everybody who is walking around on this planet has something in them, something about them, something that they know really well, that they do really well, that they are really well connected to, or whatever it may be, that people come to them and they say, hey, Joe, I need your help with this. Tell me what you think about that. Will you come over and look at my so-and-so? Will you help me with this? Will you give me your opinion on that? There's always something that people already are looking to you for. And that's where your business has to start if you want to be successful and remain sane, right? So get out of this mentality of thinking, I have to come up with the next pillow pet, or Snuggie, or Chia Pet, or whatever it may be. Get out of that mentality and get into the mentality of, okay, I got to start to look at where do people already sort of gravitate towards me. And when you identify where that area is, and let's just make up an example. Let's say that people gravitate towards you because they want to learn how to be better parents to their children. Because you have raised some really amazing kids. They're really well behaved. They get good grades in school. And everybody says, how on earth have you raised such great kids? Well, if that's what people come to you for, then you now need to look for where is there a problem that you can solve? Where is there some struggle that parents have, right? If that's your thing, I'm not going to be your customer because I don't have any kids, right? But you need to look to where are there people who have a need in that area and begin discussing with them their issues and their struggles, right? So now that you've identified that, now you go out and you use perhaps social media, perhaps local meetup groups about parenting, perhaps church groups, perhaps online bulletin boards or forums, any place where you can get access to people who have children. You begin getting that access to them and having a conversation with them about, hey, what is it that you're really struggling with? Where is it that you're having these issues? Because a lot of people come to me and ask me about this. And at this point, you're not selling any products yet. You're not, so don't get all worked up and worried about selling, because I know that's one of the things that really gets people worked up and concerned. But you're just having a conversation with folks about, hey, where do you have issues and problems, and where might I be able to step in and help? And what will happen is, after several conversations, you will see a pattern. You'll see a pattern where people are saying, for example, I just cannot get my kids to go to sleep at night. They want me to read them 15 bedtime stories, and then they can't get to sleep, and then they don't want to get up in the morning, and then they're tired during the day, so they don't pay attention in school, so they misbehave and they don't learn, and all of that stuff. So then you start to identify, okay, they really are having a lot of issues getting their kids to go to sleep. So now you've identified where people already gravitate towards you for advice, and where a hypothesis. It is a hypothesis for a business. Now, you don't know yet if that's something that's going to work out. And again, this is really important to look at everything that you do in business as not success or failure, but testing of a hypothesis, right? So you'll then go out and you'll put together, maybe that's a book, maybe that's a training class, maybe it's a workshop, whatever it may be, and again, you got to think creatively, because the example that I'm giving kind of goes in one direction. If this is about, if it's about computer software, it would go in a whole different direction. But I think you get the idea from this example. So now you have that hypothesis, and now you go out and test that hypothesis. And the way you test that hypothesis is you go out and you start to ask people if they want to pay you money to do this thing. So, and your hypothesis is not proven until someone comes back and says, "Yep, I am ready to give you money. Do you take MasterCard, Visa, Check, Discover, American Express?" And that's when you know that you've got something. And that's when you know that you've got an idea, you've got a concept that you can then expand upon. And what I always tell folks is that it's so important to have that proven idea before you leave your job, right? People always ask me, well, when is it the right time to leave my job? Well, that varies for everybody, depending upon your personal situation, your finances, and all that different stuff. But the one thing that is true for everyone is that you should not put in your 2 weeks notice. You should never resign from your job until you have that proven business idea that people have already said, yes, I want that. And then it's just a matter of amplifying. It's just a matter of putting more gas in that machine. So that concept, I know that was very high level, and I was watching my clock to make sure I didn't ramble on forever. But that very concept it's very high level. But that's really what the meat of the book is about doing that process and making that whole thing actually work.
Oh, Jeff, you did a fantastic job of taking us through that and giving us the high level. And the next question will help us even break it down, I guess, a step further, and that we're asking, for one solid concept. And that's, if the reader can only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book, everything you just discussed with us, what would you want that to be?
The concept that I would want folks to take away is to get away from this whole thought of success and failure. You've got to start to think about everything you do in terms of a hypothesis. When a scientist comes up with a hypothesis, that some chemical is going to make the grass greener or whatever it may be, when they come up with a hypothesis, the first thing that they do is they test that hypothesis. And if it turns out to not be true, they don't get upset. They just say, oh, that didn't work. That means I got to move on to the next thing. And that's the way you've got to approach building your business. And that will shift everything for you.
So you said so many things that I think are quote worthy thus far. And that leads into our next question as well, which is, do you have a favorite quote, something that you wrote that's in your book? And will you take a minute to share what it means to you?
One of the things that I say, and I got to chuckle because I think it's really funny, but I always say, if social media is changing your life, then you're on it too much. And I think that one of the things that aspiring entrepreneurs get caught up in so easily is it's not just social media. It's kind of the latest trick, tip, tactic, whatever it is. They get caught up in that, like, how am I going to make $1 million on Twitter? Or, how am I going to go on the speaking circuit and make a bunch of money that way? Or how am I going to make a mobile app and make a bunch of money that way? They get caught up in those things instead of getting down and really real with figuring out, where do you have a true concept, a true idea, a product or service that people want, and proving that people want it.
That's fantastic. And Jeff, we will put that in the show notes at the elpodcast.com so people can go back and reflect on that. But I think that's one of those things that, it's social media is a great example, and it's kind of the newer of the shiny objects to take your eye off the prize. But Jeff, this next question is obviously we're a book-centric podcast, and we'd love to ask you for a recommendation, but we try and take it a step further. This isn't just any recommendation. We're asking for the ultimate, recommendation that you can give, which is, if there's only one book you could suggest to our listeners based on the way that's impacted your life, maybe created a lifestyle or a paradigm shift, which book would you suggest? The business book that I would suggest, that I think everybody has got to read and should never
should not move forward in business without it is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's a classic, and I know you probably hear that a lot from your guests on the show, but he just did such a great job of taking the most basic concepts and putting them into a format that's so simple and easy to understand and really critical for your success.
Jeff, you'd be surprised. I think out of 186, or plus interviews, I think we've had it suggested twice. And it is, if someone were to ask me that exact same question, that would be my answer. So I'm in the same boat. I'm like, oh, I bet this is kind of the cliche answer. I bet one out of every 2, 3, 4 people actually says this. But yeah, you'd be surprised. Not that many, 2, 3 maybe, but it is my favorite book of all time. So makes me smile every time it does get recommended. But so thank you for sharing that. And I agree. I think it's a foundational type book. And anytime you hear a book that was that's recommended that's from 1937, tells you that it wasn't a fly by night or a something that was relevant at that time. It wasn't the book on social media, I guess back then that that stuff won't be relevant. Sometimes that stuff's not relevant if it's a blog article, a month later. But that has such unbelievable principles in it that live on forever. So thank you again for sharing that. And Jeff, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you, as well as your book, How to Quit Working?
Yeah, actually, if you go to howtoquitworking.com, get more information about me and my podcast. We do free webinars almost on a weekly basis, so you can get signed up and get a lot of more information about what I talked about here and some more specific stuff on what I talked about, how to build a business. If you'd like the book, you can go to howtoquitworking.com/book, and I'll be happy to give you a discount if you enter the discount code EL for Entrepreneur's Library. That's EL in all caps there. I'll be happy to give you a discount. You can also get it on Amazon.
Excellent. Jeff, thank you for putting that together for our listeners. And overall, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your book with us today.
I appreciate you having me, Wade. It was a blast, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much for listening in again today. If you'd like more information on Jeff or his book, How to Quit Working, check out the show notes at the elpodcast.com. And as always, if you'd like an opportunity to win this book, visit the elpodcast.com and become a VIP.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.